What's up, bros? Welcome to another Brograph motion graphics tutorial. I'm Matt Milstead, and today we're going to be going over VRay materials. Dave is doing a series on Octane right now. He just released a video on Octane materials, and he's planning on doing some Octane lighting and Octane setup. Well, I figured I'd go ahead and mirror what he's doing, only in VRay. So today we're going to go over VRay materials and just kind of all the different materials that they have to offer in VRay, and a general overview of what they do. So let's go ahead and get into it. So open up Cinema 4D. I've got the same Nintendo model that Dave was using for his other one, and yeah, we're just gonna go ahead. I'm not gonna worry about modeling doing each of the individual colors and layers, because really once we get the first one down, you'll kind of get it as far as the initial the material that we're going to use, because really with something like this you're going to use one material, just a whole bunch of different shades and colors and such. So anyway, let's go ahead and start off in VRay. Now I've got just a basic scene set up. I've got my Nintendo here. I've got a plane. It's sitting on top of a plane. I've got a dome light, and I've got a camera with my VRay tags on both of these. Now with the light, I don't know if you guys have watched Dave's other tutorial on basic VRay setting up. I've gone through and I've set up my settings. I just did turn GI on and did the irradiance cache, light cache very fast for print. And then I've also turned on my direct rendering, or a distributed rendering, which I will have a tutorial coming up on how to install distributed rendering on other Mac platforms. So in my light, you can see I've got an HDRI of this little sky right here, the same one that Dave used in his other tutorial. So let's go ahead and start. We've got all sorts of different materials that we can use in VRay. Two-sided, advanced material, blend material, bump material, car paint material. Now don't let this, a lot of people will see all these options, and there are a lot of options in VRay. That's one thing that is really tough to get your head around, is that there are so many options in VRay. Some people see all these options and they just want to give up. Well, I'll tell you, if you just kind of go through it, you'll see that it's surprisingly easy. It's no more difficult than just doing the standard renderer. And so the ones that you're going to use for a majority of the time, probably about 95% of the time, are your advanced renderer, your displacement material, and occasionally your two-sided material if you're doing interiors and stuff. So let's go ahead and start off with our advanced material. This is the one you're going to use 90% of the time. So we made a advanced material, and then as you can see, let me go ahead and bring this up here. We've got all these little checkboxes that we can click on. We've got 2 layers of diffuse, which if you're new to VRay, diffuse is your color channel. So we'll click on that, and you can see you can change the color to whatever you want, or you can even add a texture in here. If you wanted to add, like, say, a shader, like a checkerboard, you could add that in there as well. Or you can add, say, you've got some cloth that you want to make a nice little pillow. That's where you would add it in your texture map. Now you've got the diffuse layer transparency, which is basically, it will say where what is and what isn't colored. For example, let's go ahead and throw a checkerboard on here, and you can see basically it creates alphas for all the different parts of our color. So it kind of cuts it out like that. Go ahead and clear that, and you can also, let's go back. You can change the amount. No, you can't. Mix strength, there it is. So change that, and you can see then the other parts become a little bit more transparent. That's kind of cool if you wanted to do something like that. So we'll clear that. Then diffuse options, you've got roughness. I don't normally use the roughness myself, but you could also do a texture map to kind of say where you want it to be rough and where you don't want it to be rough. VRay dirt, I have not used VRay dirt. VRay dirt is a little bit more complicated, and I'm not really going to get into that right now. So yeah, that's basically our color channel. With the transparency, you could also invert it as well. You know, kind of switch the black and white. So yeah, you've got 2 layers of diffusion, And then your specular layer, similar to the standard renderer, your specular layer is going to be your reflection layer. In the standard renderer, you've got reflection and you've got specular. Well, they just call it specular in VRay. So we can click on that, and then you can see our material instantly becomes pretty shiny. So you've got three different types. You've got the Fong, the Blend, and the Ward. I normally stick with the Blend, just the basic one. And here you can set your specular color. If you want a specular color, like for example, say we wanted to do like a yellow, and see, you can kind of see that yellow specular color, the yellow reflection coming in. This is also good if you want to create like some gold or bronze or something like that. So we'll click that back to white. You could also do a texture map if the parts that you want to be reflective versus non-reflective. For example, I'll show you some surfaces. We got a checkerboard, so you can see on the parts that are black, we have no reflection there, and the parts that are white that are very reflective. So clear that out. Then you got your mixed mode and mixed strength if you want to use those as well. Now with specular, you've got two different options. You can either use your Fresnel IOR, or you can unclick this button right here, and then it'll bring up your standard transparency, very similar to the standard renderer. So you've got amount 100% and then to 0%. It's kind of flip-flopped in comparison to the standard renderer. So, but I like to normally stick with the Fresnel one with the specular layer transparency as well. You can do a texture map and invert it as well, similar to the diffuse. Actually, most of these things, most of the options that you see in here are all going to have either a texture map or an invert or a mixed mode, mixed strength, almost every single one of them. You'll go through and you'll start realizing that a lot of these settings in VRay are the same for just about every single little setting that you have. You'll have one thing where you can change it, and then all the other settings are the same. Very similar with the lights as well. And lights we'll do in another tutorial, and you'll see that almost all the lights are exactly the same. So anyway, I like to normally stick with the use Fresnel, and then I'm able to look up online what the correct IOR and try and get it as realistic as possible. But sometimes I just stick with the standard 1.6 if I'm looking for like just a kind of a glossy finish. If you're doing something like glass, do 1.33. Yeah, so I'll stick with 1.6. You can also do the texture map as well. That will say where you want it to be reflective and not. And then let's see, so down here we've got three little click buttons. Use the Fresnel, which we went over. Fix dark edges, if you wanted to, I guess, fix the dark edges. I don't normally use that, but that option's in there. You can also link the highlight glossiness. If you can change your glossiness to where it will, I don't really know how to explain it. The highlight glossiness will be linked to your kind of Fresnel glossiness. So I like to just leave it clicked, because that way I can just change the glossiness, and that's where basically you're creating your blur. So let's bring that down to like say 0.9. Here you can also create a texture map. Just do the circle checkerboard again, and you can see some parts are blurry and some parts are not. All right, and then you've got your glossiness subdivisions, which if it's looking a little like chattery or a little noisy, you can bring this up to 16 or 32, 64 or whatever. The higher you go though, the longer your render time is going to be. So now you've got some expert settings. I'm not really going to go over these. I don't use them that often, but if you want to go further in depth, the one thing that I really recommend if you're wanting to get into VRay and learn a whole lot of these, look at the manual. The manual is awesome. It is so in-depth, and it's got a ton of really awesome examples, and it also goes through every single little button and gives you an explanation of what they are. That's how I learned that. And a big shout out to our buddy Luke, who hung out with us at NAB. He gave me a few tutorials to check out, and they have just helped incredibly, and I'm now passing on the information to you guys. But check out the manual because it is excellent. So then you've also got your specular layer anisotropy. If you want to create that anisotropic metal look, or the radial anisotropic, or the lines anisotropic, that's where you can do it here. So that's basically your specular. You've got 5 different layers of specular that you can layer on top of each other, which is pretty cool. That's one thing that I like about R16, is that you can, they made it a layered system in your reflection. All right, so moving on, right here we've got the flakes layer. If we wanted to add flakes to our material, you can see we added in these little tiny flakes. Started off blue, and then we can change them to white. Same, you can do a texture map here. Let's go ahead and do surfaces, checkerboard, and you'll see how that shows up. So you've got some parts where it is flaky, other parts where it's not. Then you can change the glossiness, same with your texture map. Like I said, repeating settings. So you can change the glossiness or the blurriness of your flakes. If you want 100% reflective, just stick it at 1. The orientation for your flakes, you can change that. It's kind of goes a little crazy. But so normally I like to stick it at the default. I don't use flakes very often. If I am going to use flakes, I'll sometimes use the car paint flakes, but most of the time if I'm going to, I just, stick it with the standard. So then you've got the density as well, the scale, the size. You can change all these in order to change your, how much there are, or how big they are, or how defined how big your map size is, the total size of the material, of your flakes material. And then you can change your random seeding. Say we want to do 4. If you didn't like the way it looked, you can just click on your seed and then change it. Flakes filtering, you can do it directional, or you can just do it simple. And then map type, I'm not sure about these, what the settings are, but like I said, if you have any questions about them, then check out the manual. It's outstanding as far as going into depth of all the different settings. And then trace reflections. So after that, you've got your luminosity layer, which is basically your luminance layer in the standard renderer. And here you can change your color of your luminance, anything that you want to glow that you don't have a light. You can throw that onto your material. And same, you've got a texture map and the amount that you want. Say for example, let's go our checkerboard. That will turn on parts where we want it to glow and parts where we don't. Yeah, so that's your luminance. If you want it double-sided, both the front and back side, or just emit on the back side, you can compensate the exposure. That's basically, I believe it's bringing down the exposure or bringing up the exposure in order to match the scene, the total scene's luminance. Then you've got direct illumination and use VRay dirt. VRay dirt we're not going to touch on right now. So yeah, if you want it to be able to illuminate the scene as well, direct illumination is good to click on. And then you've got all these different settings that you can go into, like how intense you want the light to be in it, how much diffuse you want. You can change the intensity units. I believe these are lumens, watts, lumens per meter. I'm not 100% sure what those mean. But you've got the different settings. I normally stick with the default and just move it up one at a time. Specular contribution, you can enable the shadows, the shadow color, shadow bias. You can affect the reflections. You can turn it to where it's invisible. Say you want to put it on a mesh or something like that and make it glow, but you don't actually want to see it for some reason. You can click on invisible, change the subdivisions of your shadows and stuff like that. No decay, where you'll have basically no fall off at all. And then light portal as well. If, say for example, you're creating a window. Now I haven't actually done this, but I know you do this with lights. So you've got a window and you've got your glass texture. Normally you will put a light behind the window, and you'll change it to the area light to a portal light in your settings. I suppose you can do this with a material as well. So you could throw that material on top of your windows with the luminance, and the portal light will help even out the lighting on your when dealing with exterior sunlight coming in through a window. It'll make your whole scene just a good even lighting. And then ignore light normals. So yeah, that's the luminosity layer. Then we've got the bump layer, which is your typical bump layer. Here you bring in a texture map of some sort. Like for example, let's do some noise, and then you can see the bump material that it does right here. You can change the amount, the delta scale. You can invert it if you want, and then you've got your texture map. So bump's pretty easy. Material weight is basically your alpha channel. So say for example you've got something with an alpha, black is not going to show up, white is going to show up. And you can also invert the it as well if you want black and white or white and black, and then you can change it to an additive mode if you want. So yeah, that's basically it for the material weight. Material weight, it seems like they would call it alpha, but you know, when dealing a lot with some of my Photoshop guys, they, you know, if you want a heavier weight, it's darker, lighter weight, and it's lighter like a white, you know, so I guess weight actually makes a little bit of sense there. Material matte, I don't use that often. In fact, not really at all. But so if you're curious about material matte, you can check it out. Check out the manual on the VRay for C4D. But it's something that I don't use very often, or have used at all, really. Okay, now we've got your refraction layer. It's another one that I don't really use. Refraction is basically your transparency. If you're creating glass or something like that. Now, if you're creating a refraction layer, if you're creating glass, you're going to want to turn off your diffuse, because otherwise you're going to get the color. So let's see, why isn't it updating? So you can change the IOR, for example, to 1.33 if we're going for glass. Then specular, let's change that to 1.33. Come on, update. See if I can get, there we go, now it updates. Okay, so we've got that glass there. And then in our refraction layer, we've got a lot of the same things that we've got in our specular layer. So we've got our IOR. We've also got a refraction color. Say we want to add kind of a pinkish tint to it, create some red glass, we could do that there. If you just want it to be clear, go for white. Then you can also do a texture map with that as well. Now you can do effect shadows, effect channel, color plus alpha. Normally I stick these with the default. Trace refractions, trace depth. This is how deep you want the light to be able to go through. If you want to use an exit color, you can click on this and then reflect and refract exit color. That's if the light is going through, the color that comes out, you can set here. The color that it's bouncing off, it goes here, or vice versa. So then you've got your glossiness, which is basically your blur, similar to the specular layer. So if you bring that down, it makes your glass blurrier. Now, one thing that I recommend is when you've got your specular layer and your refraction layer, having both of those on at the same time, whatever you change your glossiness to here, change the same in here as well. So we've got 0.9 there. Let's make this 0.9 here, so that that kind of matches. And then you've got your glossiness subdivision. Texture map is where you can change the parts that you want to be glossy or not glossy. Now, I haven't used any of these, but you can enable fog parameters as well, or SSS parameters, and use interpolation, but I haven't really used those that much or at all. So, and then you've got your subsurface scattering layer, which can give you your overall color, your subsurface color, and your scatter color. The subsurface layer is actually very similar to the subsurface material. Alright, so you can do geometry-based sampling right here, and I haven't done a lot of subsurface scattering, haven't had the need to. So another thing that you can check out in the manual if you're really into subsurface scattering. But for a majority of the stuff, you're actually just going to use refraction for transparency, diffuse layer for color, specular for your reflection, and then bump for your bump, and then material weight for your alpha. Those are the ones that you're going to use 90% of the time. So let's go ahead and just throw that one on there. All right, and change our, oops, do that there. Change that to UV mapping. Okay, that's right. All right, so the next shader that we've got the two-sided shader. So what this does is it allows you to take two different materials. For example, let's say this front one would be this white and the back one would be the red, and it allows you to blend the two together to where you can see basically through it. What's great, what would be a great application for the two-sided material is when you're creating like lamps for interior scenes and you want to be able to have kind of one color shine through another color. That's a great example of when you would use a two-sided material. You've also got your translucency texture and your translucency color. Now if you change this to black, you're only going to get one side versus white. You'll get the other side eventually. There you go. So if you keep this at a 50% VRay, then it'll do an even match between the two. Now you can change that, say you want 25% versus 75%, you can change that there. So that's your two-sided material. Blend material. This is a really good one, which I do not use very often. So it's very similar to Photoshop layers, and it can be used to layer several VRay materials on top of each other. It can be used to create really complex like car paints or human skin when you're using like the subsurface scattering as the base material, and allows you to basically put material on top of material on top of material, and kind of blend all of them together. Say for example, let's create a couple of materials, and then I'm gonna have a pink, and then I'm gonna have let's do a green. Okay, and then let's add some transparency to this color. Let's do a checkerboard. Change this to 3 by 1. Whoops, not the texture map, my bad. Clear, I wanted this on the transparency. Oh, stop, texture map. Well, that's weird. Alright, I'll just do that here. Surfaces, checkerboard. So now we've got white or red and then blank, and we'll go ahead and do the same here. Surfaces, checkerboard, do 2 and 1. Actually, let's do 3 and 1. And then here we're going to do the exact same thing. You know, let's add a noise here. So we've got these 3 different, all with different alphas and so on and so on. So then we bring up our blend material, and if these would just update, VRay is really slow about updating its materials. Come on, open up. Alright, so I guess I'll use here. Alright, so as you can see, we've put those few in there. Let's do that as our base. This is our secondary material. Here's another coat material, and it blends all three together into one material. If it would actually update. So here you can kind of see when I rendered it, since the textures aren't updating, you can see kind of where the different alphas are going through, or the transparency on all the different materials. They're kind of all blending together. So that's what a blend material will do. It helps you create super layered, complex materials. Now the thing about VRay is it does not let you layer materials on top of each other. For example, sometimes I would change this to like a cubic and just have like a big stripe of whatever, and then put another material on top of it in order to cover whatever area doesn't cover this. It doesn't work like that. You can only have one material on there unless it's a displacement material, or with a advanced material, or one of the other just shader materials. As you can see, these are finally updating. Let's go ahead and delete that blend material. Alright, so next we've got the bump material. Bump material is a material, and all it's got is the bump in there. The bump material is really self-explanatory and really quite easy. So you've got your texture, you can invert it, your bump scale and your delta scale. What's next? Car paint material. Car paint material is used whenever you're going to create car paint. I haven't really used it because I haven't needed to do a lot of cars, or any cars at all. But you can kind of see you've got your base color, your flakes color, your coat color. So let's go ahead and go through this. Say for example, we want our base color to be like a blue, and then we want our flakes color to be kind of that color. Oh boy. If it would update. And then you've got your coat color as well, which is kind of your top color. There you go. So you see you got that bright blue, and then you got the white or almost white speckles, flakes, and then you've got like kind of just a tinge of pink for that coat color. And here you can adjust the strength, the glossiness, which is your blurriness. You can do a texture map. You can also do a bump map as well on here. The amount, if you want to do a bump, like a texture map as well. And then the bump type here in the flakes layer, similar to the flakes layer in the advanced renderer. You can change the glossiness, which is how blurry it is, the orientation, how much there are, the scale, the map size, your random seeding, all the same as the other one. And then with the base layer, you've got your base coat, which is going to be your overall color that you're going to have on there. You can also create a bump map, a texture map, the bump amount, same as your coat layer. Under options, you've got trace reflections, double-sided. If you want it to be two-sided, for example, if you want higher resolution, you can go to increase your subdivisions, and then yeah, your cutoff and your environment override. So that's basically it for the car paint material. Displacement material. If you're creating a displacement map, you can go in here and put your texture into the texture part, and you can say how much you want it to displace. For example, about 3 inches here, and you can click 2D mapping or 3D mapping, and depending on which one you choose, you'll be able to change the different options in here. 2D mapping allows you to change the resolution. You could do 2000. Precision, I believe, is how detailed it is. And then tight bounds, I'm not 100% sure what that is. 3D mapping, most of the time I just stick with the default on everything and just change my amount. So same here, global parameters, keep continuity. I'm not 100% sure what all these things are, but I place my texture into the noise. If you've got a colored one, you can do RGB texture, or if you're doing black and white, you can do a luminance texture. So one thing that's important with that, you always want your displacement first and then your color, and then it will do the displacement on your material, for example. You can't really see it because I think my scale on this is just a little too big. So you can go in there and you can actually change your global scale, stuff like that. Now, one important thing in your VRay settings, in options, you need to make sure that you have displacement checked. It's checked by default, but if for some reason you're not getting it, you need to double check this to make sure that that's on. So let's see what else we got. Fast SSS, hair material, and override material. Fast SSS is similar to the subsurface scattering layer in the advanced material. What's great about the advanced material is really you can use that for just about anything, any one of these. You can use it for your bump material, you can use it for your subsurface scattering material. It's really a great material, and that's why you'll use it 90% of the time. So fast subsurface scattering is similar to the one in the advanced renderer, or the advanced material. So then you've got a hair material and an override material. Hair material is whenever you're creating VRay hair or creating hair for Cinema 4D, you can set your overall color to whatever you want it to be and change your primary specular and your secondary specular color. But I believe with VRay, if you're not using VRay hair, you can actually use regular hair, but on the hair texture that you create in Cinema, whatever you're putting it onto the, you need to not only put the regular hair material, for example, let me just add hair. So it creates a hair material and then it puts the hair right here. So you need to add the hair material on top of it as well. And then that will help create the VRay hair and the VRay colors. All right, so that's VRay hair. So you've got your overall color that you want. If you want any transparency, for example, you can change it there. You can change your value to how much transparency you want. For example, I'll just keep it a black. Your primary specular color is going to be the color that bounces off of the hair first. This is your primary amount and your glossiness if you want it to be more blurry. Secondary specular color is the color that is going to, I believe, go through. It's either through or bounces in and then comes out. And then you've got the transmission color as well, which is the color that will, I believe, come out. Yeah, so secondary is probably once it bounces on the inside and then comes out. Opaque for shadows, opaque for GI, simplify for GI, used cache GI. I mostly just click on used cache GI. But a lot of the same settings for all of them as far as glossiness and the specular amount, you know, all of them are the same. Then finally, override material. What's cool about the override material is you can put in a couple different materials, and so then depending on, so say you've got GI and you've got reflection, so basically you can put in different materials for what you want, how you want one material to act. So your base material can have like all these settings, and then whatever the global illumination has, you can have it to have, you know, anytime there's GI, you can have that be a completely different material, or reflection material, you can have it be something else. Refraction material, you can have it, all the shadows, you can have it be something else. It's a very interesting, it allows the surface to look different, depending on whether it's seen through reflections, refractions, or GI. You can get really fine control over the color bleeding, the reflections, refractions, and shadows of the object. So that's your override material. And is that all the materials? I believe so. So the main ones that you're going to use are your advanced material and your displaced material. Really, those are the ones that I use almost all the time. And even with your advanced materials, a lot of these materials will allow you to put advanced materials in there. So you learn the advanced materials, and then you can do the two-sided one, you can do the override one, you could do the blend material as well. So yeah, that's basically materials in Cinema 4D for V-Ray. Not as in-depth as I would like to be, but we're running about 40 minutes right now. So that's a very quick overview on all the materials. Like I said before, if you really want to know and get really in-depth with some of the settings, while a good majority of them are just the same, where you're adjusting the blurriness of the glossiness, and setting where you want it to be glossy, and like almost alpha channels and texture maps and stuff. If you want to learn more about some of the other settings, go to the VRay4C4D.com or VRayC4D.com/manual, I believe it is, and read up on the manual. It's got every single little click button, and it'll give you examples for all of them. A really great resource, and I totally recommend it. Anyway, hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. I'm Matt Milstead. This is Brograph. Check out some of our other videos and stuff like that. Hit us up on Facebook or Twitter or wherever. And all right, we'll continue on with the V-Ray stuff here throughout the week. You can also check out Dave's initial introduction to V-Ray, where you can get a scene set up. But we'll have some lights coming up, and the overall general settings, as well as setting up distributed rendering on your Mac machine. All right, I'm Matt Milstead. I will see you guys next time.